Hi there, welcome to the video and welcome back if you are a return viewer. Yes, we have come upon me recording the August 2025 book haul video. This is actually my second attempt at starting it. Did a little handheld thing and tried to do a quick rundown of some of the books yesterday, but I didn't like the results, so we're starting again. It is Monday the 1st of September 2025. Yes, this August book haul is going to be a little late. I'll hopefully get it up by the end of the week or the weekend. Anyway, because I lied and said, this wasn't going to get many books this month, and in the end I've ended up getting about 30. I am recording this in pieces. Basically, I'll record a lot of books I got from each source over the week and edit it all together hopefully and get it up in some type of fit state after that. So today I am going to concentrate on the books I got from Herenga Waka sale about a day after I said on that last book haul video that I wouldn't be getting any more books for a while. I discovered on social media that the Herenga Waka, which is another name for the Victoria University Press, that they were having a 50% off sale for all the books that they published from the 1940s through to the 2022, the ones I had in stock anyway. So that's kind of like that presented a challenge to me to withstand the pull of a sale, and of course I succumbed to it. Anyway, excuse me. Anyway, Herenga Waka, the name, just by the way, means the mooring place of the Waka. Waka meaning literally a waterborne craft, a canoe or sailing vessel in the original te reo. In colloquial usage and modern usage, it's become a bit of a metaphor. Waka being used for any vehicle, vessel which carries people, and even broader. In this case, they're using the word Waka as meaning ideas or something. So this is the publishing house is the mooring place of ideas. Hope that makes some type of sense. Anyway, they are a university publishing house and they are very generously offering 50% off. I think the sale finished yesterday, and so when I discovered this, I had to have a browse of their website, and I found a whole lot of delectable looking books, some of which I'd had on wish lists for ages, some which I'd never heard of. So without further ado, let's go through them. So first of all, I've got these 4 books by a New Zealand author called Nigel Cox. Now, I knew of him. I actually owned one of his books, but I'd never read it. I didn't even realise that he was dead. He died in 2006, almost a decade, 20 years ago. Just going by the bio in one of these books, he seemed to have a very colourful life. He went from like a factory worker through to a bookseller through to a published author, and many years ago now, he published a book called Tarzan Presley, and it told the story of a discovery in a mythical New Zealand jungle of a wild man, Tarzan type, who also was a rock and roll singer, hence the names, Tarzan Presley. Now the estate of the author who wrote Tarzan, I think it's Edgar Rice Burroughs, were not amused when they saw this book being published, and they put their foot down, and Victoria University Press, as it was then, had to change the title, but this didn't happen until about, I think, 4,000 or 6,000 copies of Tarzan Presley got out in the wild, and it didn't sell very well, so it was in remainder bins forever. And so you could get yourself a collectible book, semi-banned book in a remainder bin for a couple of dollars, and that's pretty much what I did. I have a copy of Tarzan Presley. Maybe I can find a picture to put it up here. It's in storage somewhere as we speak, so I don't actually have physical copy in my hands, but I do own the book. And I think the Victoria University Press renamed it something like Jungle Rock Boogie or something, the title. Obviously it's a cheesy title. hopefully the book, after all that fuss, the book is worth it. So everyone recommends Nigel Cox as a great writer. unfortunately passed me by while he was still alive, and I may have read articles by him in magazines. Apparently he's a published reviewer. And anyway, one of the books here is Phone Home Berlin by Nigel Cox, and this is a collection of his essays and non-fiction work. In the late 90s, he became involved with Te Papa, the National Museum of New Zealand in Wellington. That led him on to other jobs in the museum industry, if you could call it, and he spent a time over in Berlin in Germany setting up the Jewish Museum there, and this experience is one of the articles in this collection. Hi, back again. Unfortunately, the camera battery went flat as I was trying to describe the first book. And so what we have here is Phone Home Berlin by Nigel Cox, which is a collection of his essays and journaling, mainly when he was overseas in Berlin, where he worked at the Jewish Museum. If the footage is still in the camera, I may have explained that a little better. I'll choose the best version. And anyway, that's that book, Nigel Cox. Another book connected to his sojourn in Germany is this one, Responsibility. He turned his experiences in Germany into a novel, apparently a darkly comic novel of manners and responsibilities. So that is Responsibility by Nigel Cox. And one of his earlier books was the Skylark Lounge. I'm not sure about many of the details about this one, but it is apparently about a gentleman who takes over a pool hall or bar type facility, and he also happened to be being abducted by aliens on a regular basis, and this, of course, messes him up. So that is the Skylark Lounge by Nigel Cox. And the last one I've got by Nigel Cox with me at the moment is The Cowboy Dog. Now this basically reframes New Zealand as a Western location, a kind of cowboy story, but done with a New Zealand geography and sensibility. So that is The Cowboy Dog. Okay, as I sort the books out in here, next up we have Catherine Chidgey. So you may recognise this. This is the card that came with the books. This is Te Herenga Waka, and this has the picture which is used on the cover of Catherine Chidgey's book, The Book of Guilt, which I reviewed on this channel recently. And this is taken from a piece of artwork which was advertising the seaside village of Margate. If you know about the Book of Guilt or have seen my review, you'll know that Margate has a special significance in that story. Anyway, Catherine Chidgey's previous novel is this one, The Axeman's Carnival, which is apparently the story of a talking magpie called Tama. Tama apparently comments upon the life and times of the couple that take him in and look after him, and it's apparently a look at the darker side and underbelly of New Zealand society as seen by a talking magpie. It's highly recommended and reviewed, so like most of Chidgey's books, I don't know a lot about it more than what I've just told you, so that'll be a journey of discovery for me too. Okay. Next up, another one. This one's by an author called James McNaughton, who seems to, a local author who seems to write a little bit of fantastical stuff. And this is a alternate history book called New Hokkaido, which posits that Japan invaded and took over control of New Zealand in 1942. So it's alternate history, like I said. And then the book is set in 1987, which is 45 years after the occupation began, and it's the story of some people struggling in their life as a independence, freedom, insurgency rages against the Japanese occupiers, and all the complications that come of that. So be interested to see what differences the author thought New Zealand would have under Japanese control. Okay, so that's New Hokkaido by James McNaughton. Up next is this big chunkster, Monsters in the Garden. Now this is an anthology. I think there's about 25 different things in this book. Some are excerpts from other books from some well-known New Zealand authors like Maurice G. and Margaret Mahy. There's some excerpts from sections from old 19th century fantastical books. There's some up-to-date stuff from like Tamsin Muir, well known for the Locked Tombs series. There's little bits of everything. It's supposed to be a mixed anthology of New Zealand science fiction and fantasy. A bit of a taste of what people in this country have done. So that is Monsters in the Garden. It was edited by Elizabeth Knox and David Larson. And speaking of Elizabeth Knox, here is her novel Wake. This one appealed to me. I had it on some wish lists for ages, but then I read her book, The Absolute Book, is one of the very first books I reviewed on this channel, and I didn't like it very much. It was overhyped as a massive new fantasy experience, and I thought it was boring and illogical and nonsensical, but this one's supposed to be better. Well, so they say. This is Wake. This is about a small town in north tip of the South Island of New Zealand, which a small group of people discover that everyone else in the town has gone mad and killed each other, and they have to try and survive through this, and they discover that something or someone or some mysterious force is slowly picking them off as they try to survive. And yeah, so that is Wake by Elizabeth Knox. It sounds very interesting. That's why it appealed to me a long time ago. It was kind of contemporary with things like The Walking Dead and all that type of thing. Is it a zombie book? I don't know. It was when that type of thing was big in the media. So Elizabeth Knox, captured that feeling at the time. Maybe a little pre-pandemic, a few years before that. So that is Wake. I think the last one of the lot from the Herenga Waka is this one, She's a Killer. I had this on a waiting wish list with the local online merchant Mighty Ape for a few years, and Mighty Ape really shat their own bed, and I don't buy things from them anymore, and this kind of left my consciousness. It's a New Zealand science fiction book, maybe, about, it's called She's a Killer by Kirsten McDougall. Again, highly recommended and reviewed. I just don't know the full details of the plot. Apparently it's about a juvenile character in the future who has major IQ and has to deal with struggles of a time when there's a very pressing climate emergency, and the wealthy and well-being people escape the Northern Hemisphere, and they'll come to New Zealand, and all the stresses that causes for the main characters in the book. So that is She's a Killer by Kirsten McDougall. I apologise for not actually knowing a great deal of details about half these books, because a lot of the books I've seen on the shelves are on websites, and I just said, oh, that looks interesting, bookmarked them, and then I've forgotten about them, and then the sale came along, and I found them all at a very good price, so I've grabbed them. So we'll learn these books together as I review them over the next few months, possibly. Okay, so that, I think, is everything from the Herenga Waka Victoria University Press. So Victoria University, in case you needed this information, is a major university in New Zealand in the city of Wellington, which happens to be New Zealand's capital. And they've been putting books out under their own name since the 40s, if not earlier. 1940s it is. And so I understand they were going flat out trying to fulfill all the orders from the sale. It was bigger than they expected, and I think they sold it out. A couple of weeks ago they mentioned they'd sold over 1,500 books, and so good on them for doing this. It kind of keeps New Zealand books and authors in the public consciousness. So that's that segment of this video done. So there's 3 other segments of this video that I'm going to record over the next few days, and hopefully we can stitch them all together into something coherent. So I'll see you in a moment. Cheers. Hi, I'm back again, and a book that I bought from Amazon.com.au this month, the only book I've picked up from Amazon this month, is this, The Highest Strangeness by Richard Freeman. Now, high strangeness kind of plays on the word of high strangeness, which is a description of a certain kind of experience that people have during weird, paranormal, unexplained, esoteric experiences like UFO experiences or other things like that. It's a kind of term coined to explain the kind of weird kind of loss of time and sound and whatever that people report during these experiences. And to me, it's very similar to mental health experiences. People experience similar things, so there is an overlap there. I'm not saying anyone who reports seeing strange creatures or UFOs are insane, but I am a strong believer in what's now known as the co-creation theory of these things, that there may be an external stimulus, but a lot of what these people experience is going on up here, or in their mind at least. That used to be a fairly controversial way of thinking of things, because it sounded like you were calling these people who are often very shaken by the experiences mad or insane. But no, I think there's something else going on there which hints at something deeper, but I'll leave it at that. So high strangeness is kind of like a term used for that, and this book is by Richard Freeman, as I said. I learnt of the book's existence by hanging out on the Forteana message boards, which you can probably see behind me, but washed out with the light. It's a message board on the internet, obviously, which used to be associated with the 14 Times magazine, that old venerable institution that's been running over 50 years. But it kind of broke away when the 14 Times had a change of plans about it, and now it's a kind of a lively message board where people talk about all types of 14 subjects. If you need a brief explanation, there was a gentleman called Charles Fort, and he basically collected stories of the odd, the esoteric, the occult, the mysterious, the unexplained, and he wrote, I think, 3 large books basically reporting what he had found in newspaper clippings and various things. This was in the early 20th century, and his attitude to this stuff was he's not a true believer in any of the supposed explanation. He just wants to report the facts and enjoy the weirdness, and that has become like the Fortean thing, the movement, the thought, the expression of what Forteana, as it's known, is it's basically like a collector mentality. You collect the stories, you enjoy the stories, you enjoy the weirdness of the stories, but you don't necessarily subscribe to any of the predominant theories about what this means, and likewise you don't dismiss it all out of hand. So anyway, the 14 Times is a kind of a journal of this type of thing. It kind of looks a little, how would you say, trashy sometimes with its covers, but it's there to get your attention. And I've been a subscriber for about 15 years now. So anyway, the message board's not always that attracted to me, but the website is where I get a lot of book recommendations, so that's how useful it is to me these days. Anyway, so this book is by Richard Freeman, as I said again, and he is a Fortean gentleman interested in all this type of topics, and he is particularly interested in cryptids, cryptozoology, those kind of mythical creatures from various cultures which nobody in modern times have actually seen, but people swear still exist. And rather than just talk about it on the internet or whatever, he actually goes on expeditions to various countries where these creatures are supposed to live. And I remember him writing lots of articles in the 14 Time magazine. Now this is from a cryptozoological press or something similar, a small press which handles this type of things. And it's, rather than talking about creatures, this is kind of like a compendium of weird experience, people's weird experience, the highest, strangest, the weirdest of the weird, Just looking through it, I am a little disappointed in the format. It's kind of just like a few paragraphs on each topic and the witness account, and it looks a little poorly laid out, but it still looks interesting anyway. So I bought this via Amazon. I'm not sure if it's available anywhere else. So that is The Highest Strangeness by Richard Freeman. Okay, see you with the next books. Okay, after the Herenga Waka sale exhausted me of half my money, I found myself going on a little expedition to King's Books and Stamps. Now, my original plan was to do like a used bookshop crawl one Saturday afternoon, maybe go to King's, then back towards my home again, then out to Dove, and then Reverie. This didn't actually come to pass. I went to King's and then I didn't feel too well, so I went home with my haul from there. So that's what we'll be discussing today. So King's Books and Stamps is in Warrington Street. It is moving soon, I believe, and because of that they've had a sale on for the past couple of months, 50% off books and so on. I believe they are moving to a new location, larger location in Stanmore Road, which isn't too far away from their present one. They may have already moved by the time you see this. So there, King's Books and Stamps is a relatively new haunt of mine. I went past on buses frequently, never knew it was open or anything was going on there. Thought it was just some type of minor post shop and bookshop, but it turns out it's a very serious used bookshop, and the stock there was very good, and because of the sale I was attracted back. So I went back there 3 weeks ago, I believe it is now, and picked up any gems that I could find for a very low price. And so first thing I spotted in there was Hardwired by Walter John Williams. Now this was one of the early cyberpunk books, writing the first wave of cyberpunk in the late 80s. I did read this perhaps around the late 80s myself, or early 90s, a library copy. Library copy certainly looked different than this one. This is a mass market paperback, Orbit, I believe the imprint is. This is mint, absolutely mint. It looks like no one's ever actually read this copy. Not a blemish on it. Great cover. I don't have great detailed memories of Hardwired. I believe it was about a guy who called himself Cowboy, who could jack into technology equipment, and I remember there's a lot of chase scenes where he connected himself to vehicles and aircraft and spaceships and that type of thing. Walter John Williams wrote 2 more books of roughly connected series. The second one was Voice of the Whirlwind, which I'm just trying to get hold of a copy of, and the third one was Solip System, which I have never actually seen in the wild. All 3 of them are available as ebooks on Amazon, and I think the author has like his preferred unedited versions available on the Kindle store, so you could grab those if you're interested. So it's just a nostalgia thing for me, these early books that describe themselves or were described as cyberpunk. Always attractive, and I've never actually seen a copy of Hardwired in a second-hand shop for a very long time. So that is Hardwired by Walter John Williams. Likewise, another book that was often mentioned in the early days of cyberpunk but isn't directly cyberpunk is this book, Michael Swanwick's Vacuum Flowers. Now this is a hardcover. This is the exact same edition that I read from the library in the, I think, early 90s. This is a late 80s book again. It involves a lot of space colonies, asteroids, and basically a woman's story as she wakes up in someone else's body, and there's a lot of like mind uploading, personality switching, all based on technology, and they're kind of a chase, or people want something from her, and she goes on the run and has friendly assistance from various parties. So that is Vacuum Flowers by Michael Swanwick. Likewise, I had never actually seen a copy of this in a shop for many years, and it was one I actually wanted to reacquaint myself with, so I was very lucky to find this, especially in a hardcover. I think this is a UK, yes, UK edition, so that is Vacuum Flowers. Okay, if we're going to continue on the cyberpunk authors theme, this is K.W. Jeter's Infernal Devices. This is often touted as one of the proto-steampunk books by Jeter, who was also touted as a cyberpunk author in the late 80s. This has got all the elements of steampunk, which later became known as steampunk, but this was written in the 80s before that was a thing. I cannot remember much about this book. Like the previous two, I have read this book in a library edition years and years ago, maybe 30 years ago. The blurb basically says, George's father's died, left his son a watchmaker's shop and a whole lot more. George has little talent for watches and other infernal devices. When someone tries to steal an old device on the premises, George finds himself embroiled in a mystery of time travel, wild music and sexual intrigue. Gosh. This is a recent republishing of the book. I think they put out a whole lot of Jeter's steampunkish type books in these fancy covers in maybe a decade or so ago. So that is Infernal Devices by K.W. Jeter. Okay, a couple more science fiction books and then one more non-fiction. So this one is Kiteworld by Keith Roberts. I really don't know much about this book. The author attracted me. I do have a copy of his best known book, Parvain, which is kind of like an alternate history of Britain if certain special crucial historical events like the Spanish Armada turned out differently. Kiteworld is a fix-up novel, I believe. There's a whole lot of his short stories all set in the same world, a kind of alternate world where there's an elite corps of warriors or defense people who protect this realm or land from what they call demons by flying elaborate defensive kites. That sounds really weird. I'm sure it's more better explained in the books than I can do. So that is Kiteworld by Keith Roberts. And the last sci-fi one here is Ambient by Jack Womack. Another one I read in a library copy in maybe the early 90s. This is a late 80s novel. This is the first in the what was known as the Dryco universe books. I think that label's been put on in latter day. It wasn't really called that at the time. I read all the series as it came out in the early 90s. Well, at least as the library got hold of them in the early 90s. Although this is the first one I actually read them starting with Terraplane, which is set in the same universe, but it's more of a wild thing with alternate realities and time travel. I think a guy from the 1930s, a black man, I think, from the US 1930s with segregation, all that, is somehow transported into this future alternate world where basically it's a cyberpunkish noir dystopia type thing where a company Dryden or Dryco rules everything, and there's all sorts of violence and crime and downtrodden people. Ambient was the first book in that universe, and it's basically about a bodyguard in the Dryden company who gets a bit ideas above his station and falls in love with his boss's missus and all sorts of things and all the terrible things that happen. I have no memory about this book whatsoever, besides that blurb quote that I just gave you there. I just can't remember. These books, I haven't read them all. I think they didn't really make a big impact on me until I think later in the series they introduced Elvis Presley is like a religious figure in this future world, and there was a book called Elvis-y, and then from there on I think there was a continuing character, a woman who we saw from different stages of her life, and then later was, I think there's 6 books in total by Womack in the Dryco universe. The one that made the biggest impact on me was the second to last one called like Sentenced Acts of Violence or something. Sorry, I'll put the proper title up. It's a powerful book, written like diary excerpts from a young girl who kind of experiences our world as it was breaking down into the dystopia of the Draco books, and she goes slightly mad at the same time, so she's a bit of an unreliable narrator. So that is probably the best one in this series, and probably the one that most people will remember. If I could remember the title, I'd probably tell you right now, but it's something like Census Acts of Random Violence or something like that. It's very good. Anyway, that is my abiding memory of this series. Early books not so good, later ones better, I think. So lastly, from King's Books and Stamps, is this copy of The Wager. Now, this was a high-profile non-fiction book in the last couple of years. David Gran, who's made a big name of things like Killers of the Flower Moon and all type of heavy-duty non-fiction books, wrote this one. And it's a story of survivors of a shipwreck. One bunch of survivors turn up in, I think, Brazil, and the next bunch turn up in Chile. And they have contradicting stories about who caused what and who did what to who, and the ship involved was called The Wager. And there was a big investigation, and someone had to pay for it, and would the right person be charged? So that is The Wager by David Grant. So that was all I found at King's Books. I did go back there last week with my sister when we were visiting someone, and I did not find much left, so the shop has been emptied out a bit. The owner did tell me he was considering dumping a lot of books if he didn't sell them. It was a little alarming to me, but hopefully he's sold a lot more and can make a move successfully. Okay, so that was King's Books and Stamps. Okay, onwards. Onwards indeed. I left out 2 books from the King's Books and Stamps section. Sorry about that. Okay, the other one, sorry for my incompetence there. The other ones that I got there were a copy of Lord of the Rings. Now, this is one of those parody books of Lord of the Rings, obviously, which you often hear about, some type of humorous idea of a takedown of Lord of the Rings, which has been around since maybe when the Lord of the Rings became popular with the counterculture types in the 70s or late 60s, 70s. And I think Harvard Lampoon was the organisation that published this, and it is obviously, as the movies came out in the early 2000s, it became product again, which people might buy, so they put out a new edition. This is an ex-library copy from Upper Riccarton Library here in Christchurch, so that is Lord of the Rings. And the last one from King's, which I omitted in the earlier video, The Big U. Neil Stephenson, you either love him or hate him. He writes amazing, detailed, quirky books and then fails to pull off the ending most of the time. This is his first novel, I believe, which he wanted to bury, basically. He wasn't too proud of it. It's a satire on university life, culture, all that type of thing in the US. After the success of Cryptonomicon, I think people started seeking this out and its value went up online, and Stevenson thought he probably should republish it again, get it republished again in case the bidding on old copies got a bit ridiculous. So that is The Big U by Neil Stephenson. Okay, this time I've finished King's Books and Stamps. Sorry about the mix up there. Cheers. Okay, on to Books Plus. Now, Books Plus is a overflow or satellite shop to Dove Bookshop, also located in Bishopdale Mall. It's just around the corner. So Books Plus, I've been there a couple of times in the last year or so, and it's kind of evolved a little since when I first went there. Initially, it was basically boxes of books on the floor or on trestle tables, and you had to go around and they were all arranged randomly. But this time I went a couple of weeks ago now. They had shelving up, books were arranged by genre and topic, fiction, non-fiction, all that stuff. It was quite well arranged, and the place is kind of improved a bit. I'm not sure what criteria gets books put into Books Plus rather than the Dove Bookshop. I think Books Plus is more of your old tatty and faded looking stuff, while Dove Bookshops, that we'll get onto shortly, is more of a better quality, better look, more recent type of book. Anyway, in Books Plus a couple of weeks ago when I went there, I also was heading towards the Dove Bookshop. That was my main objective, and in Books Plus I happened to bump into Gail, who I used to work with in another life, so we had a little chat about books and life and what I've been doing the last 20 years, so that was nice, and I gave her a few tips on how to find certain books online. Anyway, among the first books I found was this, Tony Hawk's Around Ireland with a Fridge. Now, I've heard this book referenced several times, read references and quotes from it, never actually seen a copy myself. So this is from the late 90s. Tony Hawk's is a UK funny man, comedian. I only know him from BBC panel shows like Just a Minute and all that type of thing. He's usually quite a good laugh on those shows. This is some exercise he took here. Someone bet that he couldn't circumnavigate or travel around the circumference of the country of Ireland carrying a fridge, hitchhiking on his way. So that's exactly what he did, and this is his story recounting that kind of absurd journey. Looks very entertaining. I'm a sucker for this kind of UK light-hearted stuff, so that'll be one I'll be reading soon. Finally got a copy of it. And the other book from Books Plus is this, Slant by Greg Bear. Now, back in the 90s, maybe early to mid-90s, my friend, you may see posting in the comments, Control-Alt-Delete, or Control-Alt-Del. His real name will remain anonymous on these videos, unless he lets me use it. He borrowed a book from me, and I think it ended up getting damaged or something, and as compensation, he bought me a copy of Greg Bear's book, Queen of Angels, which was fairly recent then. I don't have a huge amount of memory about the book. I remember it was okay. Two main parts I remember from it is that it involved some type of government agent or detective or something called Mary Choi, who was somehow genetically altered, that she was truly black or something, all her flesh was black or something, and she was some type of special agent. There was crimes and misdemeanors that she was investigating with the help of some other colleagues. And the alternate thing, which I remember more, was kind of like a alternating thread between the main investigation and this kind of messages home from a artificially intelligent space probe that mankind has sent to the Alpha Centauri star system, and it achieved self-awareness or sentience on the journey and triggered the same thing on a duplicate probe that was still on Earth. And that's the main thing that stuck in my mind about Queen of Angels. Later in the 90s, 1997, 98, Greg Bear put out this sequel, Slant. I remember seeing it in the shops. For some reason I never actually picked it up new, and I've seen it occasionally since. I wasn't too curious about it, so the original probably didn't leave a massive impression on me or something, and so I found this in Books Plus. The spine, which used to be scarlet red, is very faded in this one, so it's been in someone's bookshelf collection or something for the last 30 odd years, well, almost 30 years. This was 1997, 98, or 98 for the paperback, I think. So basically this continues the adventures of Mary Choi, who's moved to another city or something in the US, and there's a plague or whatever you want to call it of mental health problems breaking out, which in this future with nanotechnology and all sorts of advancements is a shock to the people who thought that they'd solved all those problems. So she's got a mystery to solve. So that is Slant by Greg Bear. Okay, so that's all I picked up from Books Plus, because just around the corner was Dove Books. So we'll go there next. Okay, on to Dove Books. Now, Dove Books, as I've probably explained before, is a large used bookshop, or second-hand bookshop as we call them here, in the Bishopdale Mall in northwest Christchurch. It also has its satellite shop, Books Plus, just around the corner from it. Dove is run by a Christian organisation which used to operate a series of bookshops around Christchurch. Now they've consolidated the efforts into the one location, and it is a treasure trove of books for the book lover. They seem to have a certain bar, a certain standard of appearance and quality in books, so they always have a good stock. I am surprised by how recent some of the books are in there. It's like people must get a book as a present or something and read it and then give it away to Dove. So they have a wide net for getting books and the customer benefits. So without further ado, let's see, what did I pick up in Dove Books? First of all, a couple of Alistair Reynolds novels. Alistair Reynolds, a science fiction author on the more hard sci-fi side of things. I think he was a scientist or engineer at a European Space Agency or something similar. I've read a couple of books in his Revelation Space series. There are quite a few of them to go for me, and I've also picked up all his, a lot of his anyway, short stories. Some are set in the Revelation Space universe, some are not, and I also have some of his standalone books. The most well regarded of them is House of Suns, which I haven't read but everyone recommends. But anyway, these ones I picked up at Dove were Pushing Ice. I think this is another standalone about a future ice-hauling spacecraft and its crew who get themselves involved in a first contact situation with aliens when according to the blurb, a moon of Saturn turns out not to be a moon but an alien spacecraft or something which accelerates off towards the stars. So, and they're the nearest ship nearby, so they have to investigate. So that is Pushing Ice by Alistair Reynolds. And another one from him, a more recent one, Revenger. This is a swashbuckling tale apparently of space pirates and their adventures, and some type of daring do and plot stuff which I haven't actually looked up, so that's as much as I know about it. So it's Alistair Reynolds, so it's bound to be pretty damn good. I think this one was pushed at the time when it was published more towards the YA segment. I'm not sure why, but that is Revenger by Alistair Reynolds. Okay, so to complete, I was looking in the New Zealand book section of Dove. Now they seem to have a better appreciation of local literature maybe, and I found Nigel Cox's earliest novel that is Dirty Work. Having picked up just about everything else Nigel Cox has written in the Te Herenga Waka sale, I thought I'd collect the set with this one from the 80s, and it's a story of a man who owns a bar and the woman who works there, and a kind of the relationship between them, the stresses, with the background of the social and economic reforms that were taking place in the 80s under the Labour government, who decided to go all free market and deregulation, and this is how their lives are affected. So that's Dirty Work by Nigel Cox. Next up, a book that was on one of my wish lists for a couple of years now. Elliot Higgins, We Are Bellingcat. Now Bellingcat is basically the closest that we've got to a civilian intelligence agency. They're a bunch of journalists and experts and human intelligence specialists who kind of find information about the criminals and dodgy governments and abuse and what have you, by using people all over the world who have got expertise in various fields, and they kind of put the puzzle pictures together and make reports about all the dirty deeds that are going on. Of course, this makes them targets of governments and criminals and what have you. And so this is the story of how they came to be. I visit their website quite regularly. They've always got something interesting there, so it'll be interesting to see how it all came about. The series on the back, it's updated new material, so this must be a more recent edition than the original. There we go, so that is We Are Bellingcat. Now this one I was very surprised to see, because it's only been out about less than a month when I found it in Dove Books, and that is The Mad and the Brave by Colin Freeman, and this one's still getting reviewed online, so it is very recent, and Dove had it at less than half price, and I was about to pay online for a new copy, so that was a good find. Now this is about the I guess the modern equivalent of the international brigades who have travelled to Ukraine to help the Ukrainians fight off the Russians and the people from various countries. Their reasons for going, some of them, like I say, some are mad, some are brave, some are people who just want to kill, some are people who have got a deep conscience. And this is their story. Everyone who's reviewed this says it's really good and a must read, so it is very soon to be on the top of my TBR pile. So that is The Mad and the Brave. Now this last one was a surprise to me. Bit of background, there was a book when I was a very young space enthusiast. I would go to the library, our nearest one to the New Brighton Library, and there was a book that I always looked at. When I was old enough, I got the book out repeatedly, and that was the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Space Technology. I'll probably put out a picture of the cover here. Now, later, much later, I found in joining space enthusiast groups online, so on, that this was a formative book in many people's lives. It was, I think the version I saw was published by under the Salamander imprint, but it was published under different names in the US and elsewhere. Now, it was a large hardcover book which had these amazing gatefold pictures of rockets, rockets that were well known, and speculative images of the Soviet rockets, which weren't so well observed at the time. And this kind of made them memorable, although the library copy that I saw, they actually cut the gatefolds out for some reason. Maybe they wouldn't survive library life, but glued them back into the normal pages. And it was a fantastic book in the, I think it was early 80s or late 70s, which kind of like an encyclopedia look at space technology from the early days to what was coming next when it was written, which was the space shuttle and all the visions of the future that we had in the late 70s or early 80s, space colonies, solar power, satellites, all that type of thing. And it was very well illustrated, and there were diagrams and photographs. It became like a must-have book. So when I was older, they put out a new edition of it in the 90s. I think also another one later. I bought the 90s edition, and then much later, and maybe 5 years ago, I found a copy of the original that I fell in love with in the library, so I picked that up. What's this got to do with anything? This has what it's got to do with anything. The Illustrated Encyclopedia of Space Exploration. This is a companion volume in the same format, which I never knew existed. This is more about the planets and the probes that went to them, and all that type of thing, which I'm pretty sure the other book did cover, but this has got all the diagrams in the same format as the other book. It's laid out in the same format, even the font is the same. So this is kind of like part 2, which I never knew existed. So I had to pick this up, even though it wasn't all that cheap. And yeah, so it goes, childhood enthusiasms which have lasted into adulthood for you, and that is the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Space Exploration. I have no idea who the main authors of this. I remember it was a team in the other book. Well, we got principal author Richard S. Lewis, and yeah, so that was a surprise, and so it had to be mine. So that is it. So that is all the books from Dove, and I think this is possibly the last video that I'm filming for this much delayed book haul. So tomorrow I'll probably attempt to piece all these little segments together, and we'll see how it goes. Okay.